Welcome to another episode of the Supply and Chain podcast. I am your host, Ali Raza. Today, I am honored to have Reddy Mallidi joining us. He is a best-selling author on Amazon, serial entrepreneur, semiconductor executive, many things. Currently based out of the Bay Area, but traveling, as we were just speaking about his trips to New York that are coming up. So, Reddy, thanks again for making the time. How are things going? Where are you today?
Ali, it's my pleasure. I'm blushing with all the things you have been saying about me. Things are going great. It's working on my next book, focused on the control planes, helping a few startups, and busy helping Fortune 500 executives think through AI and how do you create business value from AI, because a lot of companies, they're struggling. It's just this morning I saw a report that came out. 65% of the executives, they're not seeing any value whatsoever. And last year it was even higher. MIT study was 95%. So when you talk to the executives and boards, they all know they're investing in AI, but they're not quite seeing the how that gets into their income statements, how it is benefiting the company overall. So it takes time, as with any technology. This is obviously one of the most groundbreaking, to the extent it is compared to industrial revolution, and I truly believe that is the case.
And to that point, Reddy, I mean, you've sort of been around the block on so many things, right? Out here in Colombia, where you went to business school, and then obviously you worked in giant semiconductor before it was cool to work in semiconductor and AI, and now you're obviously writing about books. So tell me about how you got started in this industry. So you've sort of done it all from P&L executive to C-suite. What was your journey, and what has brought you to this point, what you just spoke about, which is now trying to find and evaluate AI impact? I know there's companies like Mercor and others coming up now that are basically looking at the harnesses and the LLM models and saying, hey, what is that ROI we're getting from this? So how did you get started, and how did you sort of build that foundation to where you are now, and you have this book out talking about AI Unleashed?
Yeah, so Ali, thanks for making me remember my long career journey. I have a technology background, engineering and computer science. I grew up in rural India, which makes me believe in the human potential, because I grew up uh, economically not so much, and not having so much, but it's and now I'm in the AI space, so you can. Uh, the human potential is enormous, and I see AI as an augmenter of human capacity. As for my career journey, Ollie, after I spent a few years writing software at Wall Street and other companies, I decided to get my MBA, as you mentioned, from Columbia, and then I was at Intel, because the product management role combined both technology and business. So I was Pentium 3 product manager way back in the late 90s. And I quickly grew through Intel ranks, becoming a general manager. I built a business, $700 million business for Intel out of Shanghai. And I did operations, customer experience, many roles where Intel used to provide a lot of the career growth by experiencing these cross-functional. So I combined technology and business, mostly on the operations and customer experience side. And shortly meaning, I was at Intel for a long time, but at um, ADP, I went there, two struggling businesses. I was able to turn around. Again, I am not a technology for technology sake person. It is what it does, what outcomes it helps you achieve from human side, from business side. That's where my biggest focus has been. And At ADP, there were two struggling businesses. I turned them around, leveraging data science, operational excellence, organizational changes, and improved the profitability by 11% during the 2 year period I was there. And later I came to Autodesk to run company's operations that provided 40 different services. And I also simultaneously took the digital transformation for the company responsibility. So I had both of them simultaneously. It was a huge $300 million program, and we delivered very successfully on time, even though we were going through COVID, but we delivered on time. What I see through this my career journey, Ollie, is it's it's not so much about the technology, but there's a lot of decision making that happens even in supply chains where you breathe supply chain every single day. It's not so much about the trucks and inventory, the warehouses, but it making the quality decisions faster. And that's where AI is very exciting. We can talk about that in a few minutes. But how I got into the AI, way back, when I was doing my master's in computer science 30 plus years ago, I took a neural networks class, but I didn't do anything. And at that time, there was no machine learning, statistical modeling, none of that stuff existed. All you did was you learned a bunch of calculus and not much statistics, to be honest. And then, but then when data science became more prominent, and then machine learning models started to show promise from 2010 and 2020. During that time frame, I got very interested. And then in 2019, we had a huge problem at Autodesk. Um, it was We had to screen 50 million accounts for export compliance. Every time there's a minor change, some companies address change, we need to screen the thing if they're compliant to the export controls, right? And if you have to do that, 50 million account screening, it's very complex. So the customers sometimes it may be 3, 4, 6 layers removed, and to decipher all that information intelligently, the regular software, we couldn't find anything. And that's when I decided to establish an AI team, small team of uh, 3 people. And then I put a bit of money from my budget, and we built our own small machine learning models. At the time, there was open source models were available, and we built on them, and we automated this thing. We spent about $5 million for the development and all the establishing the team, but we were able to get this done. 99.7% of was it automated, and that saved us $35 million a year. This was way back in 2019, before ChatGPT even was on the horizon, right? And what that made me was a huge believer in the power of AI. This is not about savings, again, by the way, Ali. What it did is what it used to take weeks and weeks, because we had so many accounts, and doing it manually was very strenuous task, and that was compressed into one day. And our sales guys were the happiest people because we were no longer the roadblock. We enable the screening process to be done in one day, and we will have an answer. If our system can't do that, by the way, that happened in those the few thousands, then one of our business analysts will go through the process. But that's the power I believed. And then, of course, now I wrote books, and I bring the technology and business together to show how technology can impact the business.
Yeah, to your point, right? 7x ROI back in 2019 when a lot of the AI was still very experimental is pretty impressive, and an ongoing basis was even more, right? So it's like a one-time capital investment that you made and then 35 million onwards. And to your point, right? It's great to find it's more about the scale and finding needles in a haystack, right? So to date, I've never seen a company do address more than like 400 accounts in 1 week, right? When they brute force it. But
Yep, yep.
when they get to your level, that's where something like an AI can come in. So, is that most of the premise of the book for the most part, or what is the latest book really pushing?
Oh, well, the first book was AI Unleashed, right? It had, besides the introduction and a little bit about the technology stuff, what I focused on was how it can change the art of possibility. Because, when 2022, there was a friend, after ChatGPT came, he came to me and he said, Ray, I hear there's great things about ChatGPT, this AI, and it can do amazing things. Again, people have imaginations, right? They're going what? And he said, do I really need my car mechanic? Now there's AI, it can diagnose and do all this stuff, right? But then I said, Vicky, it's not so fast. Uh, there's a realization that is happening over the last few years what it can do. But then when I was writing this book, my intention was, what is the art of possibility, meaning what it can do, how it can change finance, operations, HR, or sales, marketing, how AI can help transform in a very positive way your function. And then second, how do you do it right? Because this is where a lot of the people, I'm not kidding, I went to one semiconductor company in the Bay Area. I'm not going to say the name. And I spoke to the CEO staff. I did a little bit of a workshop for a few hours with the executive staff. And even technical people were thinking in, oh, I can give, this is the problem. I'll simplify this. In a CPU or semiconductors, there is design, there's validation, test and validation, and then it goes to manufacturing. I'm oversimplifying it. And then the SVP said, already it's like I have so many people spending time on validation. And then I told him, I know, I was at Intel. I know how much of effort goes into it, because you want your semiconductor to be there 99 plus percent, and then even 5 years after it should be functioning. So in the one section of the book, I dedicated how do you do it right, from security, from leadership, and establishing the team, from data, which is, even today, it's a huge, huge problem. And you know that better than anyone, because in supply chains you deal with data. And then that was very well received. And then at that time, agents were still not a big thing. It was just becoming a concept. But then agents came, and now everyone stopped talking about Gen AI and agents, right? How can you delegate your work for agents and the workflows? Then I wrote my second book, which was released last October. This became number one on Amazon in 5 different categories for multiple months, and it was very well received. This is all about agents. I mean, this is by the way, I wrote both these books. You don't necessarily have to be technical. Uh, it's not a lot of time. There are a couple of chapters in the second book that are more technically oriented, but even people without technical background could understand with a lot of the analogies and stories. But this is about AI agents. It's people try to oversimplify the complexities, but there are ways how do you get the things done right with agents. And I take the perspective both from a business side and also from the finance side, meaning operations and finance. And how do you transform your business using the tech? technology. Again, that's the same thread probably you heard from me from the beginning of the conversation, is that ultimately it needs to lead to something beneficial, right? So that's what I did in leading with the agents, including discussing how do you make sure that your ROI is there, your money is spent wisely, your investments are getting the outcomes you're looking for. And then I'm now, given that there is governance and orchestration, all these are becoming very, very important. Now I'm working on my next book on control planes. I'm expecting to finish that and release hopefully by the end of the year.
Excellent. It's a great series, and it's like you mentioned that the average user who doesn't know too much about AI could probably pick up some things from that. So on that note, Reddy, as you know, and you're coming to New York in a couple of weeks. Right now, the big craze is with a lot of the private equity groups and the finance groups, and Blackstone's in it, everybody's in it, which is like, let's use AI, let's go into our industrial companies or portfolio companies, and let's see what sort of ROI we can get. What are your thoughts on that, right? Because you've done it, as you mentioned, 7, 8 years ago. Before everybody was like, "Oh, let's use AI to transform private equity and everything we own." To your point and your conversations with your friend, why can't you just plug in ChatGPT to everything, find outliers, and move on because it's better than using BI tools?
Yeah, this is as you um, hit it on the nail's head. The thing is, people have this perception automatically you can bring this magic wand, whether it is private equity people or fund managers or even regular people. They think that this is some magic thing, but what they don't necessarily see, again, this is why that 95% statistic came last year. MIT Media Lab did. It's like people were gasping. 95%? Yeah. I mean, they were thinking, oh, it's only us. No, that's not the case. Everybody else is having the same problem, because the challenge, Ollie, is data. It is unclean. It's across so many silos. Big challenge. And then the second thing they don't realize is, this is where I was alluding. This is in the 90s when I was in grad school in computer science. At that time, statistical modeling and these machine learning models based on statistics, it was not even there. It was uh, LeCun wrote a paper, presumably in 80s, and then it started to become more with computing power in early 2000s. Really, it started to take a little bit of shape, and then data was also becoming so much available. So the thing that most people miss is that these language models, all the architecture is, it's probably any of them, doesn't matter. OpenAI, Llama, or ChatGPT. You take any of them. So what happens is, they're not. You don't get the exact answer. The same query you can do that. You may get mathematically. You may think, okay, I got 75 now. There's maybe 85 next time. So there are bounds where the answer deviates. And actually, one of my friends was telling me he has a company, and uh, they trained their models and they did the demo and things 20 times, and then they go in front of the executive at a big pharmaceutical company, and then it misbehaves. The agent misbehaves because it just off the guardrails. So uh, this is, they don't quite understand. Oh, okay, probabilistic models mean this might happen. Data might shift. So you need to retrain. And of course, the security, you are with every agent and every tool it touches. Instead of like, four, you may think, oh, I have four agents, but actually each of them, let's say, it touches about four databases, and it goes to five other tools. All of a sudden, you're opening up so many surfaces, the security challenges. And then there are so many legacy systems. I'm not even kidding. If you go to some of the companies, even on Wall Street or some of the HR companies, they're still running on COBOL, on mainframes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But what you need to understand is that how do you bring them into your AI ecosystem, right? So there are existing legacy challenges, data challenges, organizational challenges. Organizational challenges mean the readiness organizationally and the trust with AI. You need to address all of these things to be successful with AI, and it's not going to be overnight thing as people are assuming. AI is super powerful. It has a lot of potential. But to get there, you need to have good roads before you think you can drive from San Francisco to New York. If you don't have the road, it's going to take probably multiple vehicles and lots of stops. And instead of 5 days, it may take a year.
Yeah, to your point, right? I don't know why, but today I was targeted by the AI bots from YouTube to watch this video of how you can actually use public transport to get from DC to New York City, Manhattan. So it can be done, but to your point, it's so segmented, it's so fragmented. Sometimes you have to walk a little bit before you can get the next, bus or train. So on that note,
Yeah, absolutely.
how dirty is the data, right? So some people are just surprised when I tell them that with our customers at the demand point, the dirty is about 50% clean. So if that's where you're measuring the demand from, guess what's going to happen with the supply? By default, you have to order 2x more of what you don't expect to, right? Because you just don't trust the customer demand signal. So on that note, talk to me about data quality, maybe also just why people need to build a operational logic layer, which is now being dubbed the harness, which seems to be the most popular word in the agentic AI community.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I don't have a quantified number about, what is the average quality of the data. But what I would say is data is across the board. Every AI or software company I talk to that is working on AI at their customers' enterprises, everyone says this is huge problem. And actually, incidentally, I in my first book, AI Unleashed, I'm looking at page 118. It has a table, dirty data types and their impact on AI models. I know people can't read this one, but it's it just this chapter was dedicated on data. So I'll give you a real case study, right? It's not a case study, but an example from my own experience. When I was driving the digital transformation, we had 15 years of data. 15 years of data. When we were doing the digital transformation and moving to S4 HANA, we needed to clean all that data, right? It took months of effort. See, the digital transformation forced us to clean 15 years of data. This is a technology company. There are industrial companies. There was a Midwest manufacturing company. They don't even have, they, it's, they don't even have sensors or cameras to detect which parts of that in their manufacturing line, which parts they actually have in warehouse. They cannot even accurately tell. This is a real company, but this is what two examples where data is such a big problem. 50% sounds about right because I would say when I was doing the digital transformation, probably 70% where we were because it's 15 years of data. And a lot of companies, when I look at this manufacturing company, probably their data is 20% clean. So somewhere in between, it sounds about right, average, right? But that's only that's a partial answer, Ali, because uh, the data, even if let's say 50% clean, are quality data, right? It is it is siloed in multiple locations. That's another big problem, right? It's a multiple databases, and in our case, it's not only multiple databases, but a lot of the data was also residing on people's laptops and one or two desktops somewhere in the office. So the segmentation or fractionalization of this uh, data sets, that's another big problem. And the third problem is this goes back to the institutional organizational challenges is you go and want the data, people are unwilling to give the data because it's there is, oh, I'm going to give this, and they're going to train their models, and then tomorrow I am out of job, right? Or, oh, it's the business unit wanting the data, the IT, oh, we don't want to give the data. So there are always these internal um, parochial things. So all these are very challenging to someone goes there. You want to build this AI, you want to train the AI model and build this application for supply chain, let's say for inventory, supply, and demand match, let's say optimizing that. You run into these challenges, and that is a huge challenge.
Yeah, to your point, right? And I saw like I don't know why I've been way too much in the news and on LinkedIn reading things, but Google is trying to buy Spirit Airlines, like whatever the assets are, primarily for its data right now, right? Saying, hey, because to your point, customers won't let you in, and they won't let you just copy your data and train your models. But a lot of bankrupt companies, especially the industrial space, are complete opportunities for large language model labs to just go in and just suck out and really train on real user data, right, from internal systems. So and that's I think what you already have a background in what you explained to with what you were doing at Autodesk, finding these outliers across these different systems across like 50 million records, right? So what do you think is missing in the system, right? As well, like just the ecosystem. I was at the Agentic AI Berkeley event a couple weeks back, right, where Don Song was speaking, and a lot of like cybersecurity use cases, but the takeaway on ROI, like except for Mercor and maybe their 10-minute talk, there was just a lot of hypothetical. How can we make stuff more efficient in terms of infrastructure? But really nothing on the ROI side, right? Which is like, what is the impact of all this all? And Google's DeepMind chief strategy officer got on there and say, hey, it's a big bet, and you got to invest in infrastructure before we can do anything about ROI. But what are your thoughts there? Like, what is the ecosystem doing? Like, is it developing at the right pace? Is it still going to be a little bit more research oriented at Berkeley? Still doing a lot of this, how to set up agents, evals, etc.
Yeah, so I think there are all of those statements are valid, right? You need to invest in infrastructure before you see the ROI. I agree on that. I think what is missing today, Ollie, is just we touched on and elaborated trustworthy data foundations. That's a huge real constraint. Yeah, of course, to his statement, yeah, you need to invest in that. That you I would consider as putting that into the infrastructure. And then what is missing today? Again, I'm not talking purely from ROI perspective. What is missing from business perspective is we had reporting dashboards for Power BI and all kinds of tools have been there last 10, 15 years, right? But what was missing is the decision intelligence. And this is again, AI is really great at. We have to get there. And then the third one is AI adoption is what is missing is the AI adoption also would require organizational change management. What is happening is the labs, especially you and I are in the Bay Area, it's the labs are churning these models so fast. Technology is moving so fast. It's unlike anything we have seen, right? It's if we had Windows 2000 upgrade, that took months, and then even before that, Microsoft did so much bug fixing, all that. There was like every release took 3 to 5 years, but now it is like every week there is a new model coming, right? The technology is advancing faster, and it's organizational adoption and organization. I don't mean AI adoption, but organization to absorb the change that requires change management. That's missing. Its challenge is not AI, but trust and workflow redesign. Again, this is to the point I was making earlier. If you want AI for AI's sake, that's a different thing. I'm not one of those guys. I want AI for impact, business impact, or impact, positive impact on the people, right? So that's where that's those are the pieces moving, and most AI projects they don't fail because of the model. The models already have the sophistication, right? For a lot of the work that can be done, they fail because of workflows, because no one is changing the workflows, how AI fits in. And a lot of the workflows don't even make any sense, right? You need to break them completely, redesign them, but that's not happening. And incentives, trust, and change management. These are all the reasons why most AI projects are failing, not because of the models.
And to that note, right, and you're probably seeing this on the chip side and given your time at Intel. So if you're seeing the newer chip companies that are emerging, they're really focusing on this, like, hey, we need to have the processes and workflows to be AI native day one, right? So how do you see those emerging companies? I guess Etched is one, Samba Nova is another, Cerberus is one. How do you see them with that? Hey, we're going to start with the AI underlayer, running it properly and have the infrastructure versus the Intels and the other large giants of the world in the space that have been around 40, 50 years. There's a whole bunch. ARM. There's you can name a Micron. Like what's the difference between them trying to now retrofit AI into their workflows and trying to redesign it versus the guys who are coming up and obviously have huge valuations, but are taking that approach of, hey, we got to design with AI in mind first. Like, what's the big difference from your perspective?
Well, the big difference is this, Ollie. It is, if you're starting from scratch, it's a lot easier, right? I'll give an analogy from cell phones, right? Where do you think the cell phone adoption happened the fastest? It's where the existing phone landline infrastructure was very poor, right? It's India became a huge market, right? It's the regular village in India, they didn't have telephones, right? It's so the adoption became so easy. China, same thing. Versus here, there there was so much hesitation, and it took a long time before the cell phone adoption happened in developed markets like the US, right? In the same way, if you're starting a new company, you can be AI native by default, and that should be you should be the AI native because that's you're just starting. But if you are Intel, for example, you have all these existing systems, factory network. These are legacy and very old. Same thing with even Autodesk. We had ECC, SAP ECC. That was 2003. So the challenge is attaching AI to existing ones is not the right strategy, right? So, can you become AI native overnight? No, it's not going to happen because that means you need to abandon everything. And then if you have 5, 10, 20, $30 billion business, that's not going to happen, right? No one is going to do that. I think my suggestion is without disrupting your current business, where can you start making the changes in the workflows? Don't hesitate to break the workflows, existing workflows, but you don't want to be in, if I'm in Intel, for example, right? The factory network, assembly test factory network, where all these things happen. I don't recommend you change that with AI today. You need to take a look at it by piecemeal where it is amenable, right? But there are a lot of areas. So even within Intel, your HR, your finance, uh, I hope they still do that. We did the planning, quarterly strategic planning for the factories and all that. So nothing prevents you to use AI. Look at all these processes, FP&A, for example. Nothing prevents your FP&A team to adopt AI tomorrow. Nothing prevents your team in HR team to, for example, onboard new employees. All of those are easy use cases. So you need to go and choose the use cases and break existing workflows to bring in AI. And then what happens is people believe once they see the positive impact, they believe. And then you should have your main operations, like for example, assembly test line thing, right? You can't break that maybe, but you do a pilot to see what you can replace it, and then you duplicate that across all the factories.
Yeah.
But that's going to take time and effort, right?
And so, how do you convince people? I guess ready at the executive level, because you've been an executive yourself at like Intel and Autodesk and other places. But that conversation, which is like, yes, like we can't be AI native, like immediate, probably never, right? It's almost like trying to bring in lean intuitive production systems and try to implement it into your factory, which doesn't work unless it's day one Toyota, right? And they're going to run with Stewart and Deming from day one and come up with something revolutionary. So, is that your approach to just going to boards and C suite executives? Like, I get the 95% failure rate, I get the 65% failure rate, but there's some easy pickings in the back office with HR, with like to your point, what you did with compliance back in the day, for for the 50 million
Autodesk.
Autodesk. That's right.
Yeah.
So is that basically, and how do executives respond to that, right? Because obviously with big old Fortune 500s and government organizations, they want to minimize the risk but get some sort of return, right? I think with large organizations, people don't realize that when you're selling to like a large car company, unless it's Tesla, right? They're not looking to revolutionary stuff. They're looking to minimize their IT security risks, their financial risk, their marketing risk, but at the same time, like get some sort of win to say, yeah, we're using agentic AI, Gen AI, quantum is now. I see it in certain organizations. They're testing it out. So, what is your approach? Is that basically it? What you just spoke about?
Yeah, I think you need to choose the easy use cases first. You have to work with the executives because inherently they look at these billions of dollars of revenue, right? And then they will think, okay, if I disrupt this, my CEO or whatever executive VP of customer, whatever those roles are, they will be worried like, okay, this is going to put my department, my job, everything in jeopardy, right? So I'm not going to do that. Risk aversion is number one, right? And the benefit is next thing, right? But the risk aversion, the fear of losing it is much higher than gaining something new, right? So you have to convince them by picking most you call it low hanging fruit or easy to implement use cases, because that will convince them. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for lack of any other name, Ford, if you pick Ford, right? Let's hypothetically just say, okay, I don't know if they're still having, after the COVID stuff, the disruption, if they still follow just in time inventory, right? That became popular for decades. But now, the thing is the flexibility and just in time efficiency in in general, you would think they're opposite goals, but with AI, they're not anymore, because AI would enable you to proactively look at the risks, proactively look at the forecastability, and give you better predictions, right? So they will help you with the decisions. So what you can do is, let's say the inventory, uh, if you convince, hey, let's not take your whole inventory, but maybe just say, maybe steering wheel, just for lack of anything else, right? And the inventory, how are you running it? Is that very efficient? And let's use AI to train and then make it such that you have the flexibility while you are minimizing the inventory. Then let's run the experiment and then see what happens. So let's say if you're carrying 5% less inventory than needed, so you're freeing up 5% cash, right? So the CFO is going to love that. The operations VP will love that, right? And then you show the benefit without disrupting this thing. And I can give you lots of examples like that. Customer service is another area without you know completely changing the business overnight. Let's say knowledge base, you use AI, how quickly the responses are coming, and then let's say our goal is going from 10% automated responses to, let's say, 30%. We want to get there tomorrow, and you prove it with that use case, and then you would convince the executive, oh, I see this, so let's try another one. So convincing them of the AI's potential, not disruptive to the business. And that would lower their Teflon shield and say, okay, let's try this, right? And then once they see the benefits, they're willing to go to the next one, right? Like that. Before the big leap, 2-year project, they will sign on it, without knowing what the outcome would be, right? So you need to help them lower their guards.
Yeah, to that point, right? And today on a prompt, I was just talking to the team, but many companies, I'm sort of seeing what you're talking about, right? Where they'll just come to you and say, "Look, we are who we are, but if you can give us a way to look out 120, 180 days, and then just sort of change the sequence of how we're addressing the same task. I mean, we're still going to address the tasks, but if you can move it around so we can get a little bit more, productivity." That's something we can try, right? So what I'm seeing, especially in warehousing and logistics and operations, is that like, hey, we can't really change our ways, but if you can change the sequence of what we're addressing, where we don't have to really move from how we do operations on a day-to-day basis, then we can look at seeing if this is good or if our experts are our experts, right? And they figure stuff out over the years, and this is our competitive edge. And to that point, right, what is the right approach with AI, right? So what I've seen in the space, and I guess this is where that 95% comes from as well, is like, a large organization like we use Ford, could be General Motors, Volkswagen, whoever it is. I mean, typically you go sell to the CIO or the CEO or the chief engineer, and they typically don't give you they should give you the entire thing and say, hey, here's the master data to give it out. But what typically happens is they'll kick you to a corner of Turkey or something and say, hey, prove it out in this location first, and then we'll scale it to another 4 factories and then the next 100 factories, right? So what is the right approach, I guess? Because we've sort of done both. Obviously, if you can get the keys to the kingdom day one, but who's going to trust you with, a Ferrari day one right after your driver's license, right? That's like very, very generous from any C-suite, public C-suite executive. So what is the right approach in your experience and what you've seen on deploying these AI agents? Is go local, prove it out local, and then look for scale, or hey, we need so much training data, it's not even worth doing anything unless we get all this training data from the top.
Um, it's actually depending on the circumstances. It's if you get even the local experimentation mandate, right? That's a great starting point. But I think what needs to happen is executive executives from the top, whether CEO or CEO or CFO, someone from the C-suite saying that this is an important thing for us. Without that, you run into lots of challenges, right? It's organizational politics and these silos. No one is going to give you that, even if they say, you know, go ahead and do locally, but they need to stand by and then say, hey, this is an important one. And their behavior, we all go by what they do, not what they say, right? If they're behaving as if this is important, and then everyone will help you support, whether willingly or in some, few cases unwillingly, but they will help you succeed, right? Uh, from the top mandate perspective, the language needs to be there. The authority needs to be there. Otherwise, you won't succeed. Let's say, this is what I had seen, and what I have been seeing, Ali, is that the AI person, the head of AI, sometimes they're on the C staff, sometimes they report to the CIO, and sometimes two, three layers down. They're called the head of the AI. They don't have much budget, they don't have much authority, but they have to deliver, and they're set up for failure. In that case, let's say you go to that person, you're not going to succeed, even if they're trying their best, because the mandate needs to come from the top, executive buy-in needs to be there, and where it needs to happen could be very selective locally. Some companies are very federated, so if you don't have the local support or the small team support, you're not going to succeed. So depending on the culture, um, you may start local and gain the trust. It's there was a um, civil engineering company. I was talking to a friend who is a president there. He was telling they're structured. Every local office is pretty much like autonomous, and so the best approach in that case is the CEO says AI is important. We're going to make this the most important initiative. Okay, then everyone listens. And then the thing is, if you go there and then say, I'm just going to put a center of excellence of AI, and we're going to dictate to every team, you're going to see a lot of resistance. So you need to work with the local autonomous or semi-autonomous offices and then say, hey, this is, what are your pain points? And work to reduce them, and they become the believers and they become advocates, and other teams want to do the same thing. So it's a mix, and also a cultural dependency of the organization.
Yeah, I think this was the challenge maybe 10 years ago. You remember with the corporate venture capital groups and the innovation groups, they were not really brought into that C-suite umbrella, right? To say, hey, like you're running special projects, so just keep me in the loop on how this is going. They were sort of like given budgets to go try technologies out, but nobody from at least the tech startup world knew what the end goal was, right? The thought was that, yeah, someone from the top is just watching, but I think with the AI age now, 10 years later at least, I hope more groups are involving, or at least keeping the C-suite abreast in terms of, hey, this is what's going on at the innovation level. So I think that maybe has changed. I don't know in the last 10 years if you've seen a change, but when I was starting out back 2016, like, oil and gas, corporate venture capital, like they were just sort of the people they just put to the side and said, hey, you're welcome to work on projects, but most of them unfortunately weren't like they didn't have roles for them in operations, right? So HR was like, well, where can we put them? Let's put them in corporate venture capital or innovation because they can still figure out the tech and see if it has any applications within our organization. So um, I don't know if that's your experience with corporate venture capital and innovation, but more and more funds are popping up for this sort of stuff. Sure, you're tracking.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And your thoughts on that? I mean,
yeah.
agentic AI is very hot. Physical AI is even hotter this year, right? So, what's driving those valuations? Do you see? I mean, VCs have to exit in 10 years. Do you see a 10-year exit for a lot of these companies, or?
I believe so, but I think this is the reason I said that I believe so is uh, the 10-year horizon is quite long in AI terms, right? Because AI is moving so fast, right? Gen AI, no one is saying Gen AI anymore. It's all about agentic AI or AI agents, right? And then harness, all these terms are coming, but it's all about agents. And my my thinking is this is still the Wild West. Things get changed quickly, and before the stabilization, things will very fast evolve, right? It's like the gold rush, and then roads are being built, and we may not see the ROI, but I think the budgets are increasing constantly. Corporate budgets are increasing, and then by 2027, I think the patience will run out. And of course, patience meaning as CFOs will say, okay, I'm not seeing in my income statements. I need to see this. So show me the money, right? And then the labs are investing, hyperscalers are investing in data centers because the compute is so scarce, memory is so scarce, all those. So companies are popping left and right. Or we will have TPU equivalent, another one, efficient architectures. All those are happening. So the dust will settle long before a 10-year horizon. VCs, my guess is many of them will either survive or die, or they succeed hugely. They become the next Palantir. I mean, Palantir was started in 2003, 23 years ago, right? It's not overnight, but it might become like that. And then they will have exits probably 5 years from now. I don't think 10 years is going to be such a long time for VCs to exit. If any, they will exit long before that because many of them don't survive. Some survive and then become hugely successful. Um, from the PE side, it's not clear to me because what I hear from friends is they have a lot of assets under management. Everyone is trying to exit because of AI is causing a lot of disruption, especially to the companies that PEs have bought, many SaaS companies. Everyone is trying to guess how AI will disrupt, and so there's a lot of anxiety around that. So I don't know about the PE side, but VC side, the dust will settle, and many of them will exit one way or the other in coming next 5 years.
So on that note, what is next? I mean, do you work at all on the quantum side? Do you look into that? I know the larger companies are looking at that. Is that on their horizon? Will that awash the AI industry or at least the chip industry from your perspective?
Yeah, to be honest, Ali, I am not an expert in the quantum side, although I came from semiconductor industry. Um, it is promising, and if I hear, if I believe what they're saying about the how it solves the complexity simultaneously versus the CPUs or GPUs, there is a huge, huge promise, but it's extremely nascent. So I don't know where that will go. But when it matures, the technology matures, and then qubit architecture matures, then AI and quantum can be a huge both would benefit from each other because today, we are struggling for compute, and then if quantum becomes a reality, that will solve that problem. But it's a completely different stuff than what we know in semiconductors.
And to your point, right? And I think it's a good time to like loop back to that 50 million accounts that you had to look at. Quantum would just do it in a zip, right? I mean, that's what I'm seeing with
Oh
some of
yeah,
our customers. Like, just they're testing it out now because the idea with all logistics planning would be done in an instant, right? If it does succeed, at least the plans would be running faster. But that doesn't really mean it's going to have operational impact, but at least the plans will be done very, very quickly for all sorts of things. Of course, they're still subject to the
Y-
same inputs that are dirty data, foundations, all that. But speak to me on what you're working on these days. So you mentioned you have a new book coming out right this year. That's mostly focused on controls. You mentioned.
yeah. I just started on the book, so I'm expecting to complete. I only wrote a few chapters so far, but it will be out sometime. Maybe November, December timeframe. Before the end of the year, for sure. I plan to bring it out because what I see is you asked about why I wrote the book, and I was telling you how do you do the AI right now, the with the additional challenge of the AI agents, the governance and orchestrating things besides the top applications. Users see the applications, right? And then all the hyperscalers and these guys see LLMs, and so in between there are multiple things that need to be done. And how do you do that effectively? That's what I'm focusing on, the control plane, the middle layer. That's the book about. Um, and hopefully I'll bring it as I plan to complete my the 10 chapters soon, and then before the end of the year I want to bring the book. And then second, I'm also helping some startups, AI startups, from strategy to operationalizing. How do you be efficient? And the experience I have had from the executive roles and what I have seen, and having that mature person with industry experience, they value that. So I have been advising a few of them.
Is it mostly hardware, or is it software, or is it a mix of everything, or?
It's mostly in the software side of
Gotcha.
startups and the AI startups. Yeah, yeah.
Reddy, I know we're coming up on time, so I look forward to your third book and just compressing all this knowledge over the years that you have. What's the best way to reach out to you in person? Is it LinkedIn? Is it obviously getting your book off of Amazon and is probably the best way, but or emailing you? How does someone set up some time? And I know you're extremely approachable person. That I will say that
Thank you.
will show up pretty much, and you're on the road again. As I mentioned, you'll be in New York for those listening in a couple of weeks. But what's the best way to reach you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn, or they can even send an email, ready@readymallidi.com. It's very easy to remember. And or go to Amazon, get my book, and then ping me there too. I will be at New York, this AI Enterprise Conference that is organized by DSE, Data Science. I forgot the DSE full
Yeah.
acronym. They are organizing on September 1st, so I'll be there.
Excellent. Well, Reddy, thank you again for your time. And we could probably speak for forever on what's going on with enterprise AI. I mean, there's years and years of like pitfalls that we've discussed over the years. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining in to listen to Reddy. And hopefully this should be ready by Friday, and we'll go live then. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. I really enjoyed the conversation, and again, great to catch up with you, Ali. Take
Take
care,
care, everyone.
and best of luck with throughput. Yeah.